This week's episode of Doctor Who took us back to the Regency era for an encounter with a romantic renegade. But what did I make of Rogue? In a nutshell, I thought this was another strong episode for the season, very nicely done overall with all the production design in terms of the costumes, the sets, everything, the music, the dancing, choreography, the Regency era was really nicely evoked. And of course, at the centre of this story, the heart of the story, we have this new character, Rogue, played by Jonathan Groff. It was our first fully fledged Doctor romance in quite some time, and that just made for a really interesting, refreshing story, I think, having someone who really is a match for the Doctor in lots of different ways. But let's go right back to the beginning first of all and talk about that opening scene, the kind of pre-title scene with the title card of 1813 Bath, England, and the conversation between the two blokes there in the grounds of this kind of estate. I did think that was a bit strange, actually, the kind of way it just kind of opened with that. I guess maybe the intention was to make this feel less like an episode of Doctor Who and more like an episode of Bridgerton, clearly a key influence here in terms of the style and feel and the look of this story and the promotion of the story as well. Of course, we then have the reveal that one of these guys is not what he seems at all. He's an alien in disguise, and he kills the other guy, and we have that wonderful traditional Doctor Who thing of someone dying before the titles have even played. That was all very nice and creepy and atmospheric with the flashing lights and everything, the kind of moody, dark atmosphere at nights. But yeah, perhaps not the strongest scene to open the episode with. I think in a similar vein, starting off with the Doctor and Ruby already having landed and already in this era and doing the dancing and everything, kind of took me a little bit off guard as well. It might have been nice to have a TARDIS scene or something before that just to kind of set the scene and properly immerse us into this era. But I think obviously the thing it does allow for is for you to get straight into the action and kind of straight into the feel of the Regency period, and very quickly we see where the story is going. The Doctor kind of sees Rogue up on the balcony. It's clear that they're going to be spending a lot of time together over the next 45 minutes or so. And Ruby gets taken off by the Duchess to supposedly go and find a suitor, and again it becomes clear that she is going to be interacting with all these kind of people and women from the Regency era, and kind of we're going to have this contrast between present day and past attitudes towards relationships and all that kind of stuff. And I think actually for the most part this works really nicely as a kind of structural thing, having had 2 weeks of Doctor and or companion-like episodes in a row, it was really nice in particular to focus more on the Doctor this time, to know from the off that we're going to get lots of scenes with him and Rogue. And separating a Doctor from their companion or companions, always allows you to kind of delve into the other stuff that's going on with them as a character, the kind of the lonely god type stuff, the kind of the last of the Time Lords, kind of immortal type stuff, like I walk in eternity, I'm here forever, basically, and my companions, they come and go, and I'm so lonely, all that kind of stuff. And I think Rogue was the perfect foil for the Doctor in this regard, the perfect character to bring out this other side of him, someone who, like I say, really is a kind of match for him in terms of also being a space traveller and also being someone who comes and goes from place to place and travels with people, all of those parallels there. And I guess we don't learn a lot about him beyond that, beyond the fact that he is this traveller, this bounty hunter who, like the Doctor, goes from place to place, travels with people, has lost people. But I think honestly that was probably enough. It was kind of nice to have that kind of mystery surrounding him and for him to be a bit of an enigma like the Doctor. And, it's always that thing, I suppose, when you're trying to get characters who can match up to the Doctor in terms of authority and in terms of all this kind of stuff. And I think ultimately these characters are always going to pale in comparison to the Doctor, be they kind of love interests like Riversong or just kind of equals like Romana. But like I say, I think Rogue really worked, and I think that had a lot to do with the guy playing him, Jonathan Groff. I think he brought a really nice, restrained quality to the character. There have been lots of comparisons between this character and Captain Jack Harkness, from the first Russell era. There were even people thinking that perhaps Rogue could be a new incarnation of Captain Jack. And I think perhaps if Rogue had been as sort of flamboyant and kind of extra as Captain Jack in terms of his personality, it might not have worked so well. I think as it was really nuanced and really believable, the way it was written and the way it was played by Groff and Gatwa. Not everybody likes the idea of the Doctor being romantically involved with the people they meet. It's very much a kind of new series / TV movie invention, that idea of the Doctor companion romance. And it's interesting because, in recent years, the relationships between the Doctor and their companions or the people they meet have been pretty platonic, kind of more so than they were in the early years of the new series. There was Thasmin in the Jodie era, but that kind of only went so far. Beyond that, there was certainly no romantic involvement between the Doctor and Graham, for instance, or Ryan, or the 12th Doctor and Bill. That was kind of as far as you could get from like a romantic Doctor and companion pairing. And I believe it's actually 10 years since the Doctor was last kissed by someone on screen, that person being Missy in Dark Water, if you want to count that. So that's basically a very roundabout way of saying that it's been a while since we've had a kind of fully fledged Doctor romance like this, and a story like this as well that really dwells on it and kind of centres it and makes it the kind of heart of the story. I think in terms of previous stories, The Girl in the Fireplace is the one that Rogue has most in common with. Again, that was a story, or the first story in New Who indeed, that's really kind of focused on a Doctor relationship. Of course, the biggest new thing here, the biggest way this one deviates from previous Doctor romances, is the fact that it's the first gay relationship the Doctor has had, or I suppose, more accurately, the first time he's had a relationship with another man. And I think that was all really nicely written and really nicely played and felt, like I say, very nuanced, very natural, the kind of slow burn nature of it, these parallels between these two characters, the things that Rogue had in common with the Doctor. The way the story gives them this chance to get to know each other across these various different scenes. The Doctor taking him back to the TARDIS, for instance, and kind of showing him the TARDIS. I suppose very much the kind of idea there of taking someone home with you. And of course that devastating tragedy at the end where, Rogue takes Ruby's place in the kind of triangle thing. Like I say, other than the gay elements, it's nothing particularly new or nothing we haven't seen before with Madame de Pompadour in The Girl in the Fireplace. But I did think it was particularly well played, and because we had so many years without a story like this, it felt really special and really earned. And it also doesn't have those weird connotations of The Girl in the Fireplace where the Doctor is meeting someone as a young girl and then kind of falling in love with them in the next scene as an adult. In terms of other things that play in this story, we had the separate plot strand with Ruby interacting with Emily. That kind of wasn't so developed, wasn't as developed as the strand with the Doctor and Rogue, and I suppose ultimately, in the end, kind of only served as a means to an end for that climax to kind of put Ruby in peril and to kind of create the scenario and the circumstances for Rogue to step in and save the day. It's not the best ever story for Ruby, I suppose. There wasn't loads and loads for her to do beyond, in the first instance, kind of exclaiming, "It's so Bridgerton," every 5 seconds. And then also having those conversations about changing attitudes between Regency England and now. But that's something I can live with because, it gave us more Doctor screen time, which was very, very, very much needed after 2 weeks of him being away. I've already complimented the whole production design thing with the Regency era, with the sets, costumes, choreography, etc. But just again to say, that was absolutely fantastic. The scale of this operation in terms of the number of supporting artists and stuff is just incredible. I think the only other elements I haven't yet discussed is the antagonists of this story, the monsters. I believe the Chulda they were called in the end, the bird people led by Indira Varma's Duchess. They were just great. They had such personality to them. I loved the way that as the story progressed, this kind of idea of cosplay came into it. This idea of these aliens basically doing cosplay, and that is their whole goal and their whole mission, the way they do things by taking bodies literally of people and their clothes and playing these roles. Just fantastic. I think they in particular felt very reminiscent of the first Russell era, like they could have just stepped out of a series 2 or 3 episode. I suppose they were quite typical of aliens from that time in the way they were kind of inspired by real life animals like the Jadoon or the pig slaves or the cat kind. So in summary, I thought this was a very strong episode, a very solid episode, very, very nicely done in terms of the romance of the Doctor and being a character study for the Doctor as well. It was really nice to have a story that's properly focused on him again. Beforehand, this was very much billed as the Bridgerton episode, Doctor Who does Bridgerton, the Regency episode in terms of all this sumptuous production design and sets and costumes and stuff. But I think it's that romance and the character of Rogue that the story is really going to be remembered for. It's definitely a defining story for the 15th Doctor. But what did you think of Rogue? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new for more Doctor Who Season 1 content over the coming weeks. But otherwise, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.